Good morning, everyone. This is week 2 of Menu and Facility Design. My name is Steve Hilborn, and welcome back. It's Monday morning, and we would have just met on Friday where we went over both the syllabus and kind of debriefed a little bit of what the first lecture was and the major project. As a reminder of the major project, while I don't want you to tackle some of the design components until we get into it, now is a great time for brainstorming and really trying to determine if you want to work with other people or if you would like to work by yourself. This week we're going to do a few things. We're going to look at, last week, as we said, we covered the video introduction of the course and the major project. I will put a short video introduction of the major project for those who were unable to attend class. So just one more time, just to go through it and make sure I answer any of those questions you might have. As always, please come and talk to me at any time you want and have a meeting with me so we can go through those questions. This week, there will be a video covering the food service industry, which we're talking about right now, and some of the history of the restaurants and menu. And then this upcoming Friday, we'll have another live class where I introduce the assignment and we do a quick debrief of the lecture. As I said previous, I think the best use of our time is for me not to re-lecture every time we meet for a live class. I might touch upon the main points, specifically as it relates to some of the assignments, but it is on you to watch all of the lectures. So if you're watching right now, thank you, and keep doing that. A couple things that I want to talk to you about that I have seen happening in the industry, and one of which is called dynamic pricing. So I don't know if you have heard of this before. Currently, Blue Mountain is one of the ones who are seeing how this works. So I think 2 years ago was the first year that they started it. And essentially what what dynamic pricing is that you change the prices of a product that you sell based on demand. Now, this is nothing new. Concert tickets, sports games, concerts, of different events, iPhones, all these things based on the amount of people that want them, they increase the price. Hotel rooms, weekends versus weekdays, you see this happen. But it's never really happened with food. So what they're doing now, Blue Mountain, is that they're doing this with food and beverage, which means if you go to a restaurant that Blue Mountain runs at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, let's say you get a chicken club sandwich for $15. If you go at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., that same chicken club sandwich will now cost you $18, because based on the amount of people wanting to eat at 6 p.m., there are more, we're going to charge you more per item. I'm personally against this. I think it's kind of ridiculous that depending on the time of the day that I decide to eat my food, it's going to be more money or less money, because the food cost is the same, the labor cost is the same. It really shouldn't have an impact. I understand why people want to do this. They want to make as much money as they can during the time periods that they can. But it's something about it feels immoral to me. So that's something for you to think about. We've also seen group buying. So I don't know if you've heard of food buy, or even a lot of these larger Cisco companies and Gordon's food service companies that are the major food suppliers to a lot of restaurants. They're now getting into it as well, where they're basically partnering with a bunch of companies. So what will happen is this food buy group, as an example, will partner with a pest control company, a linen supplier, food, different types of beverages, maybe electricity, heating, chemicals, all the stuff that restaurants need. And they say, as long as you use us and our particular companies that we have approved, you get a huge cost in savings. So Blue Mountain has reduced their cost by 7%. Now that's 7% extra they get to keep, which is insane. And as you will see in the next few slides where I show you how much most restaurants get to actually take home, if you were to add 7% on top of that, you'd be very, very happy. So as far as what is going on in the industry, so this is going to cover some of the stuff that's happening. Canada restaurant industry is part of every community. We have more than 97,000 restaurants, bars, and caterers across the country. And this is more so on the commercial side of things, which we will talk about shortly. So the amount of annual sales generated by restaurants in 2019, so this is pre-COVID, is $79 billion, about 1.5% of the country's GDP. Almost 1.2 million people are directly employed in the accommodation and food service industry, 6.4% of the country's total employment, and just a lot of great stats where 1 in 5 young people between the ages of 15 and 24 were employed in accommodation and food services. This is the first job for 22% of Canadians. We hire almost 300,000 indirect jobs in related industries. So this is our contractors and our digital designers and all the things that we need to run our restaurants. And we bought $27 billion worth of goods of food and beverage, and 22 million daily visits to restaurants by Canadians. There is 36 million people in Canada, maybe a little bit more than that. So when you think about that, 2/3 of people are going to a restaurant every single day, which is great. So this is some of the business conditions that are currently happening in Canada, third quarter of 2021. So this is up to like August 2nd. So very, very new information. So some of the business expectations over the next 3 months is that almost 80% plan to keep the same number of employees. 40% of people expect the rising cost of inputs to be an obstacle. So all of my food, beverage, uniforms, linens, all this kind of stuff. About 30% expect profitability to decrease. 23% expect the demand for products and services to increase, so more customer base, more people coming. 22% expect to see the rise of prices of goods and services, and only 15% expect sales to decrease. So some of these businesses almost 20% plan to either acquire or invest in other businesses or restructure. About 15% anticipate shrinking their office locations, which doesn't really have to do a lot with maybe food and beverage, but I can see on the accommodation side, they're shrinking some of their front desk staff or having them work remotely. And 5% plan to transfer, sell, or close their business. Some of the outlook is 52% are optimistic and 24% are very optimistic. So 76% of people in Canada are optimistic about the future, and I am one of those. So count me in on there. And then some of the others are a little uncertain of which way to go. In Canada, pre-COVID, as far as food service and drinking place sales, we sold about, so this is in thousands of dollars. So this is actually not 6 million, but $6 billion. I believe this is 2019. So 2019, almost into 2020. This is what was happening in the industry. So $6.2 billion in sales, much of that coming from full service restaurants. Limited service are those fast food places. So this is one of the first times actually that the fast food sector has now risen above the full service. So these are like the sit down casual restaurants versus the fast food. And with more time constraints and people on the go and driving more than ever, that doesn't shock me at all. Drinking places. So these are just like clubs and nightclubs, 211 million. These are places that don't serve food. So like pubs, or like a Kensington's or a Donnelly's or something downtown, North Country, where they have like kind of like a nighttime bar club environment, but also in the daytime. They're all considered a full service restaurant. And then special food services, and this could be food trucks and caterers and things of that nature. So this is 2019. Then COVID hits, and you can see what happens here. So this is the drop. So we go from our, whatever that might have been, in the $6 billion range. We drop all the way down to, what's that, under $2.5 billion. So more than a 50% drop. It was a big hit. It really hurt. It hurt a lot of us. Many of us, my fiance was laid off from her job 4 different occasions. Laid off, hired, laid off, hired, laid off, hired. It was a mess. Needless to say, we have been bounding back, and we took big strides last summer, and then again we took this hit. and then we raised up again in the summer, and now we're really starting to crawl back to where the vaccination levels are pretty high. People are feeling safe once more, and we're kind of on this trend to see where we are going to be going in the next year. So we're at 5.3 billion. We're under 1 billion from where we were in pre-COVID levels in 2019. So it is really coming back. Limited service still, when they were almost tied before as far as their sales, now they're almost over by $550 million, which is that fast food drive-through service. So obviously that makes sense why they are doing very well. And I think this is all really important information because it gives you an idea of the landscape of food and beverage and what is happening out there. What I think is going to happen, and this is probably the best case scenario, but we're going to see a shift. I don't think you need to look very far, and take Barrie as an example, to see that we may have been over capacity. We had too many businesses in Barrie that serve food and beverage. The competition was through the roof. And what happens with all this competition is that it lowers prices, it gives customers more options, and then while it's good for the consumer, it's not necessarily good for the business. So I think what's going to happen is that some of those weaker places that were just hanging on, we're going to see them collapse. But in general, the businesses that survive or evolve and adapt will be stronger for this. And it's unfortunate how it had to happen and what they had to go through to get there. But I think we're coming out of this, and I can apply this to the majority of the hospitality sector, accommodations included, that we're going to come out a little bit stronger for this, although it still will take maybe another year or two for us to get back to those peak levels. Very good timing for a graduate to be coming out of this program, because there's more job openings and more job openings in like a mid to senior level management that I've ever seen. Because usually people will get in those jobs. The frontline people are transitory, right? So that's probably like 60, 70% of your labor force, transitory. They're there for a year or two during school, seeing if they like that industry, seeing if they like that job. But if they don't get a raise or a supervisory position or can really move within that company, they may move on somewhere. And we depend on those transitory people not needing all supervisory roles. Now we're at a point where all levels of management have holes and gaps, and we need to raise them up. It is the #1 industry in Canada that has the greatest labor shortage. That's a good thing for people who are trained with 2- and 3-year diplomas, and educational and co-op experience to walk into this industry and to walk in with their pick of the litter. So good for you. I hope it works out well for you. Please take a lot of consideration and time in how you choose your next couple moves in the next 8 to 12 months. This gives you an idea of some of the operating ratios. Now, this is 2017, but the percentages, these are all percentage based, and they all basically have stayed the same. So it'll show you what the cost of sales, so this is generally food and beverage, and the other things that come with it, the salaries and wages, the other expenses, and the pre-tax profit. Now, as you can see, on average, if a company, the average food and beverage company only keeps 4.3% of their revenue, which means if you make $100, you're keeping $4.30. If you make $100,000, you're keeping $4,300. So it's really not great, right? Restaurants have never been the best investment model in the world. It's a lifestyle. People love working in restaurants, being in restaurants. So it's not necessarily, if you're an investor and you're looking for the best return on your money, this isn't it. But rather it's the best lifestyle, a type of job, and where you get to work and the people you surround yourself with. That often is a big payout. Now, that being said, if you own a keg restaurant, you're making 20%. So these numbers are averages. So they keep in mind all the people who are doing very poorly and have negative amounts of money or making negative dollars, and all the people who are doing very well. So if you can do very well, and many people do, there's no reason that you can't make millions of dollars to the bottom line, which means income in your pocket. As an example, Keg makes about 20%. They sell about $9 million a year. So the owner of that company is keeping $1.5 million or so every single year. It's great. Also just gives you an idea of some of the changes amongst different provinces and the cost of sales. So you'll see sometimes that out in the eastern countries, they might have a higher cost of sales. Even on the West Coast a little bit, they may have a higher cost of sales because it costs more to ship the food there because they're not close to those major urban centers. And there's some of the profit lines. But generally, it seems that PEI does quite well as far as their profit. They also have a huge summer influx of tourism, like many of the other eastern provinces. New Brunswick is doing well. Nova Scotia is lacking a little bit. So that brings us to what is a food and beverage operation. And we like to break this up in two different components, one of which is a commercial operation, and the other one is a non-commercial. And the difference between the two is that a commercial operation, the main way that they achieve profit, revenue, income, whatever word you want to put to it, is through the sale of food and beverage. And it can be looking in many different ways, right? So they could be independent chains or franchises. This makes up the majority of the industry: casual, quick service, limited service, family service, indoor, outdoor, food trucks, breakfast places that are open 24 hours a day. They vary greatly in the way that the business is set up. But they all have the one thing in common is that their purpose is to maximize their profits through the sale of food and beverage. Even lodging food service facilities are included in this. So when you think about a lot of these hotels and maybe places that you worked at, they probably have 4 or 5 or 10 different options for food. Some have several different restaurants on site. They might have lobby food service, Starbucks, or a little bakery or coffee shop in the lobby. They'll have take-up, deli bar, pizza and beer through room service. They'll have caterings. They have all kinds of different things. So when we look at the lodging food service, and why you take so many food and beverage courses when you are in a hotel resort program, is that it is almost 50-50 when you think about what's a revenue generating activity in these places. Any theme park, tourism location, museum, ball game, venue, concert, you name it, food and beverage is a huge factor in that, and where they make much of their money. So this is what we call multipliers in the accommodation industry. It's the bottles of water that we keep beside the bed that we charge $3 for you to drink. It is the mini bars. It's all takeout menus. It's all the stuff that, other than the actual accommodation price, we get you in many different ways. Some of the other operators are bars and taverns. So this is the drinking establishments. So it's 4% of the total Canadian share. And these are your wine bars and cabarets and nightclubs. The pubs are often considered as food serving areas. So they're considered as your full service restaurant. Catering and banquets is 7% of the total Canadian share. And that's your conference centers and food festivals and barbecue festivals and wedding venues. And they actually have some of the highest return on investment because most of them do not have that mortar and bricks location that they need to pay for, right? So that's where a lot of their savings are. And then it comes to non-commercial operations. So if the idea of a commercial operation is to maximize their profit through food and beverage, a non-commercial operation is to exist in properties where food and beverage service is mostly mandatory, but not the main mission. Think about a cafeteria in a high school. They charge for their food, they like to make money, but if they're not making money, it's very unlikely that they would get rid of the cafeteria because it serves a purpose that it's feeding the students to ensure that they are able to learn. Same thing in cafeteria in many of these different factories. I know many of you actually go work at the Honda plant sometimes. So the Honda plant is a cafeteria. They try to make money off it, but what they're really trying to do is minimize the expense of serving people food while providing nutritious meals, because the nutrition point is often the most important. So when we look, there's a couple of different non-commercial areas that we look into. One of which is healthcare. So hospitals and nursing homes and all these different places, they are generally not trying to generate revenue or income off of the food. Rather, they're trying to help people heal from injuries or soothe them or make them comfortable with food while they're waiting on their loved ones and trying to get some sort of healthcare. Lots of different ways in which that we serve food in these places. So there's patient services where we bring it typically to the room. So tray service or room service and some nourishments. There's the retail. So this is usually for either the employees, or all of the people who are visiting. So this is vending machines and catering and kiosks. And then there's also the nutritional services, which can be both inpatient and outpatient. There might be also some community education and researching of diets and other things in there. And very similar with those community-based hospitals, although sometimes they do have those mobile meals and childcare centers attached as well. When it comes to business and industrial organizations, vending machines are the most popular, although typically they have the least nutrition assigned to them. So many places will have a gourmet dining facility or executive large dining rooms. There might be an employee meal program that can be subsidized, or if some places just don't have the ability or space to have a cafeteria, they may get some mobile catering trucks to show up outside their building at that specific lunch hour or break time. Schools, colleges, and universities. So as you know, you are kind of, not now, but hopefully in the future, students will be back on campus, and you are almost a captive audience where you have to be here for a course. You might have a 2, 3, 4, 5-hour break before your next class. So often people stick around on campus. They go to the library, they go to a friend's house, they go sit in a cubby somewhere, but they get hungry. So we specifically in the United States and a lot of their larger campuses, they have huge amounts of food options. But even here, we're a mid-tier college as far as size-wise, about 30,000 full-time students. Of which, you might see 10 to 15,000 students on campus at any day. There is a lot of potential for different food options, and I think there's 9 or 10 different food delivery or food procuring stations around campus. And that could be your TLC, the First Class, the Georgian Dining Room, the couple different Tim Hortons that are around, the main cafeteria, Bun on the Run. There's a bunch. So take a look at this graph, and it kind of breaks down all of the different areas in which that we can get food. What I hope to see soon, and what I think is going to be happening, is a grocery store and convenience store that are utilizing some of our gardens, our bake program, our culinary programs, and some of the different urban agricultural programs that we're going to be starting. So that'll be really neat in the future. And to round it out, there are other ones as well. So leisure and rec operations, which are your amusement and theme parks, sports arenas, stadiums. If you wanted to go watch a Jays game or a Leafs game, you're paying about $20 for a 20-ounce pint of beer. They make lots of money doing that still. So while most non-commercial operations are usually doing it because they're just trying to fulfill a nutritional requirement of their customer, some places can really take advantage and make a lot of money off it as well. We have planes, trains, ships, and then of course we have prisons and military bases and religious and athletic facilities, casinos. It is huge. So when it comes to operation or organization of commercial operations, we have 3 basic categories: the independents, the chains, and the franchises. The independents are owned by an owner or owners, and usually only have one property, although they may have more, and they typically have no chain relationship. So Donnelly's, which is a pub down on Dunlop Street, or the Grilled Cheese Factory, or 148, or all those ones that are in Barrie, are considered an independent restaurant. They can do whatever they want. Local business is fairly easy to attain. It's less capital to get started, and they often provide consistent value and good service. Some of the disadvantages are they might have a success rate beyond 5 years, which is not great. They maybe have different menus that differ from one another if there's different locations. Some of their operating procedures lack consistency. And while there is a market for it, some people question, does the consumer trust the independent one-offs as much as they trust the Boston Pizzas of the world? So next is a chain restaurant. So the difference between a chain restaurant and a franchise is that the chain restaurant is owned by that big company. Jack Astor's is a chain restaurant. Okay, so all of Jack Astor's are owned by its company called SIR Corp, SIR Corp, which is Service Inspired Restaurants Corporation, and they're out of like Burlington area, where their head office is, and they own all the Jack Astor's. So you can't become an owner of a Jack Astor's; they own all of them. So some of the advantages is that they have the same menu, and they can purchase a lot of their equipment cooperatively. They don't need to purchase one deep fryer for $600. Instead, they can purchase 20 deep fryers, get them all for $400, and then as they need them, they can just move them to different restaurants as needed. They have all standardized operating procedures for every restaurant. So the way they in which they cook their chicken wings, do they answer their phone, do they greet a table, are all the same. And people, if you haven't realized now, as a customer, they like consistency, they like convenience, they like things they know. That's why everyone gets an iPhone and pays ridiculous prices when really it's the same phone. Because the idea of going to a new phone, and instead of swiping down to get my menu pop up, I have to swipe up or something, blows people's mind away. And they're like, I can't do that. I'll never be able to figure out my brain to swipe down instead of up. It's really silly, but the consumer mind is really not that difficult. The way that we purchase and the thought process goes through our mind, it's not rocket science, and most people can figure it out. The owners of a chain restaurant are the parent company. While some can be franchised, so as an example, the kegs, I think they're about 80% corporately owned, but sometimes they can franchise out a few of them. So just to make things more complicated, most chain restaurants keep all of them underneath their own umbrella of companies. They hold on to them, but sometimes they might sell them off just to get some more money. Great advantages that they can experiment without great risks. They can hire staff specialists, so they can hire their social media manager to run their 70 locations social media ads, whereas the independent one place might not have in their budgets the $80,000 a year to hire that person. And they also have useful comparative financial information amongst all of their different restaurants. Disadvantage is that their bureaucratic rules and procedures can slow response time to market changes. So you can't just go and be like, hey, we're out of limes for this particular dish. I'm just going to sub in lemons. You can't, because that's against the rules and standard operating procedures. You would just not have limes. Silly example, but you understand what I'm saying. And then also it's run by management and not by owners. And there is a difference, because an owner will care about their business and they'll put in longer hours and they won't take any shortcuts. Whereas in management, if they're treated well, they'll do all of the same work as owners. But if they're not treated well, they don't have the same motivation. So it's a little bit different there. And then you have franchises. So franchises are probably the most popular now as far as new restaurants opening up, because these people can develop a few very well-run chain-style restaurant concepts. And then once they get it popular and working very well, then start franchising it out. And that's where they make a lot of money. So the franchisee is the owner of that specific property, and they pay fees to the franchisor or the franchise company. So Dairy Queen, they're all franchised. So if you are the Dairy Queen company, you get paid by the franchisee of the person who wants to open up a Dairy Queen, or McDonald's or Tim Hortons. These are all franchises. In exchange for the rights to use the franchisor's name, building, design, and business methods, quality standards must also be maintained. So if I am Joe's Burger Shack versus McDonald's, it's going to be hard for me to bring in business. It's going to be hard for me to market Joe's Burger Shack. It's going to be hard for me to get staff, because do you want to work at Joe's Burger Shack or McDonald's, where they are a reputable brand and they have great training and you can move from different locations and there's a huge management training program. Same thing if you want to work at Donna's coffee shop or Starbucks, right? That has a lot. Starbucks has that brand power behind it. So people will franchise Starbucks so they can use that power to their own advantage. So the other advantages are the startup assistance. So they'll bring in people and they'll bring in all the standard operating procedures and all the stuff that you need to get going. They'll tell you where your suppliers are and how to purchase and really help you out. The royalty fee is based on percentage of revenue. So every franchisee must pay a franchisor a percentage of their revenue. So 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever it might be. They give you the training materials, the more revenue due to extensive advertising. So you're also, anytime there's a commercial for a Dairy Queen, McDonald's, your McDonald's franchise, while having nothing to do with that commercial, will receive the benefits of people seeing that commercial. Lower costs due to volume purchasing, tested operating procedures, and then name recognition. Some of the disadvantages, the contract always favors the parent company. So they get their money first before you get anything. So if it's 10%, they take the top 10%, and then you're left with the remainder to pay all your bills and things like that. The contracts also restrict style and methods of operation. So because you're a franchisee, you have to carry all the menu items. If they have a brand change and they decide, I want all of my seating to be in the restaurant, and before it was yellow, you as a owner of the franchise would have to go and pay for all your red seats to be changed to yellow. Silly things like that. Here's some of the worst failure rates of franchises. So UPS is 12% and Curves is 16%. Cold Stone Creamery 31%, Quiznos 25%. Pita Pit is a 51% failure rate. Pita Pit used to be so very popular 15 years ago, and now it's just really taken a dive. Blockbuster Video 77% failure rate. That's not a big surprise. And many people will say, well, why is it not 100? Going into bankruptcy and failing at your franchise means that you no longer can pay the franchisor and they close it on you, versus you just saying, I'm selling my Blockbuster or closing it off and I'm done. And then Wings and Things is a 94% failure rate. There was one in Barrie. It's not here, obviously. There's a couple different ways that you can own a franchise as well. The first one is a single unit franchise. So the majority of all franchisees start off this way. They own one. They use their own capital to develop their business, so their own money to develop their business, and they pay their franchise marketing fees to the head company. A multi-franchise is one where you are granted another franchise after you are successful with one unit. All companies, most franchise companies work this way, where they say, okay, you have a Tim Hortons in Barrie, you're doing well with it, you're getting good numbers, great. We're opening up another one in North Barrie down by the hospital. Would you like to run this one as well? And if you have the money that you can do it, you get the first option. Otherwise, then they'll open it up to other people. But now you're on the top of the list. I actually wanted to own a Pet Value franchise. And I tried to get into a part because I figured pets are recession proof and COVID proof. Pets always eat. They need toys, they need food. People love their pets more than they love their kids. They pay money for it. I thought it was a perfect business model. But you can't purchase a Pet Value because there's a list of hundreds and thousands of people that want to also do the same thing because people love their pets. And then you have a multi-franchise. Sorry, I already talked about that. It does operate like a regional manager. So once you own a few, you stop becoming just your independent solo restaurant manager, but instead you manage the 3 or 4. So what happens is great things because you can start purchasing like you would for 3 or 4. So let's just say it's French fries for a McDonald's. Because now I'm purchasing not for 1, but for 3 different McDonald's, I can purchase more at a lesser rate and save money. So the more I own, the more money I get to retain. It's volume purchasing. And then finally, once you have excelled enough in this particular industry, you will be awarded or offered a master franchisee area development franchise. A gentleman in Aurelia opened up a St. Louis. It's a bar and grill, but it's mostly just wings. There's 3 of them in Barrie, 4 of them in Barrie, too many of them in Barrie. And basically what happens is that from Aurelia north to Huntsville, he has the area development franchise. So nobody can open up a St. Louis in that area unless it is offered to him first and he says no. So basically what happens is you're granted a territory. You can now also sub-franchise. So you as a franchisee can sell your franchise to another person, and you can charge your own line or level of fees. So you can add an additional level to profits and royalties. So let's say typically a Tim Hortons is 5%. As a master franchisee, you can offer your own Tim Hortons somewhere else. This person pays you 6%. You keep the 1, and the other 5% goes to the head office. So that's that second line or level of profits that you get to keep. And what you would do is that you would direct and manage and help provide support for that store. So master franchisees can also organize site selection, construction, operational support, so the franchisor can focus on their markets and opportunities. So here's a couple of examples. So if you wanted to open a KFC, it's part of the Yum brand. KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, they're all the same company. You would have to have $750,000, a $45,000 one-time fee just to get the franchise. You need a net worth of $1.5 million, and your total investment is probably around $1.3 million. The royalty fee is 5% of your gross revenue for both royalty and advertising. So that's off the top, which means if you make $100,000 in a month, they're taking $10,000 of that even before you pay for your food and your staff and your labor and all that good stuff. Anytime Fitness is one. Here's the keg. Tim Hortons, a New York Fries. So this is one of the less expensive ones. So you only need $220,000. It's 8% total of your gross revenue. Your total investment should be close to about $500,000. And it's owned by Cara Foods, which is now called Recipe, but they're a really big brand as well. So it gives you an idea of what's going on out there and some of the prices. And then, sorry, I just needed to add one part. There's a couple special considerations. So while we do have restaurant facilities, so these are the commercial operations, we also have a couple other ones, such as schools and universities. And this also has to do with a little bit of design information. So many larger schools operate a centralized kitchen system with satellite and pop-up shops around, or residence halls. And as you can see, this is a design floor plan of a college university with all of their food operations laid out for you in Canada. These are some more of the design components and layout of a hospital and healthcare center. So while we take a look at menu, we also want to take a look at the design components and how it works. And you can see that this cafeteria is centrally located close to the admitting and the entrance, close to the gift shops, but not too far away from anything that they can attend. And then also correctional facilities. So I wonder if I can blow this up here for you so you can get a better view. I'm just going to blow this up for the sake of just looking this over. So the thing about correctional facilities is that you must be very careful in how you feed people, because you do not want too large of a population in the same area at the same time. So often in those movies that you see where you have 400 inmates all in the same room, it doesn't really work like that. Rather, what happens is that when they come in, they eat in smaller groups, and you have to filter them in and filter them out. So you just kind of see, this gives you a really good idea of like some of the nursing station and the booking areas, some of the classrooms, and this is the big kitchen here with their dry storage freezer and all the other stuff. So it gives you a good idea of how this could work for different kinds of non-commercial or commercial operations. It's all different when it comes to design on how you're working. And the last thing to talk about before I let you go is contract management. So contract management is basically a company will come in and take over some of the management operations of your food and beverage. As an example, what happens here, even at Georgian College, is that Compass Group comes in and runs our cafeteria. So Georgian College does not hire all the employees and set the menu for all the things up in the cafeteria. That's done by a second party, or a third party, I should say. It's great because sometimes, we can focus on education. We don't have to focus on the food component. We can negotiate better deals. It's more efficient, and the food service portion of this is operated by the experts. So we don't have our president, who is very smart when it comes to an educational facility, but probably doesn't know her way around a back-of-house kitchen very well. We don't have her making those kind of calls. We just leave that to the experts. Now, some of the disadvantages of that is that management companies can assume too much control. Often what they do is that they are there to make money. So they may decrease the food and beverage quality. They're trying to make more money. They have a dislike of profit-making business operating healthcare, educational, non-commercial programs. So previous to what we said is that in a standard non-commercial, we're just trying to provide enough food and nutrition for our students to learn so they can be good students, and they're not worried about what their next meal is coming. Rather, now we're bringing in a company who's just looking to make profit, where you see those ridiculous prices that we do see in the cafeteria nowadays. And then worst case scenario, which has already happened, is that the institution is now dependent on that management company. So we are now dependent on Compass Group running our food and beverage services here at Georgian College, and we wouldn't know how to really break away from them. So that's the difficult part. It would take something like COVID right now, where nobody's at the campus, for us to break away cleanly, bring in new people, and train them under our own Georgian College umbrella, which I'm surprised they didn't do. This is just Compass Group. I talked about Compass Group. They are probably the largest company that deals with the food and beverage component. They do a lot of our military, defense, offshore and remote, sports, education, healthcare, and business. They have over 550,000 employees and work with over 55,000 clients in 50 countries, a lot of which in Canada. And there's actually a lot of job postings. So if you're ever interested in like working for one of those big conglomerate, because you can find a lot of jobs that will never actually keep you working in hospitality, but you won't ever be facing one of the hospitality customers, right? So it's more of like a marketing or a management style position, very higher up, working with large amounts of customers and clients, but not on a face-to-face basis. You can work for this company. Check it out. The rest of the slides is just a ton of information about how food service shaped the world and some of the first cookbooks and where some of these different food things came out, refrigeration, mass production, what was the first restaurant, the uniform. None of this stuff is going to be on the test, but this is all really kind of cool, fun to know information. How the first potato chip was made and all that. So please, on your own, read through. Let me know if you have any questions about this. It was longer than anticipated, but sometimes I just talk and talk and talk. When we get into class on Friday, we will have the first in-class assignment. I will go over it. I will debrief some of the lecture or answer any questions. Shouldn't be more than an hour of the class, but I do want to meet with you and talk and just see if you have any questions about anything that's going on. The assignment has a couple different working folders or documents, so it's best that we all meet and go through it. And then from there, it'll be due the following Sunday. So you have about 9 days to complete it and submit it, and that'll be all through Blackboard. Okay, so that's it for the lecture here today. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and have yourselves a great day.